Hello, my name is Naima Ramos-Chapman, and I am the Associate Editor at CampusProgress.org and Pushback.org. And we're here with Travis Waldron, the economics blogger at ThinkProgress.org, and we're here to talk about the Fiscal Cliff. Okay, so I just finished reading New York Magazine's article, which is a guide for absolute morons about the Fiscal Cliff. And let's assume I am an absolute moron. What is the Fiscal Cliff, and how did we get here?
The Fiscal Cliff is actually an assortment of policies and issues that are all kind of coming to a head at the end of this year. You have the expiration of the Bush tax cuts, which last December, they were extended for 1 year. So those are going to expire. Then you have some new taxes that came in from the President's health care law, the Affordable Care Act, that are partially paying for the cost of that law that will start in January. You have a couple tax credits that are expiring, and then you have the payroll tax cut that was put in part to stimulate the economy that is also expiring. On the other side, you have some policies that are continually renewed each year. Unemployment insurance has to be extended, or should be extended. Then you have the alternative minimum tax patch that is a kind of as-we-go type deal. And then you have the spending cuts that were put in place in the debt ceiling deal last summer that are set to start taking effect in January, which hit defense spending and discretionary spending. All together.
And what's discretionary spending?
Discretionary spending is our domestic discretion, the things that we get to choose each year, how we're going to fund them. And then, so all of those things together essentially form what Ben Bernanke, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, called the fiscal cliff. They're all separate policies, but Congress is sort of choosing to deal with them all at once, partially because they have to and partially because that's the negotiating strategy each side has taken.
Okay, great. So why should young people care about the fiscal cliff, and what programs are at stake?
Well, there's an assortment of programs that affect young people. You have the education programs, the America's Opportunity Tax Credit that helps young people go to college. It gives a tax break to their parents when they're enrolled in college. That will affect about 11 million families if that expires. Then you have an 8% cut roughly to federal student aid programs at a time when your federal work service money is declining, when your federal aid is already declining from previous levels. So those are obviously big effects on young people. Then you have the across-the-board cuts to our domestic budget. Those could hit things, anything from community health centers that help young people get insurance or provide care to people who don't have insurance. You have things like food stamps could get cut, women, infant, and children programs could get cut. Basically anything that falls under our domestic discretionary budget that's funded on a year-to-year basis that isn't already protected and isn't already funded in its own way could get hit by this. And that could cause a lot of problems for young people who depend on the federal government, and for young people who just support federal government programs and believe that they play a vital role in our economy.
So it's a lot to unpack here, and I'm just wondering, so how do we make sure that we invest in those programs that mean most to young people? What does Congress have to do in order to reach a deal to get there?
Well, there's a lot of negotiations. The president has put forth a plan this week, and Democrats have put forth several plans in the last few months, even before the election, that would extend the middle-class Bush tax cuts, would extend tax credits like the American Opportunities Tax Credit, and would kind of shift around the spending cuts in a way that would not hit some of the domestic programs. How that will be done is unclear, but Congress, they're talking right now about negotiations on a deal that the president and Democrats obviously want to raise new revenues to help reduce the deficit, primarily through raising taxes on the wealthy and letting the high-income Bush tax cuts expire. Republicans don't want to do that. They're talking about raising revenue through closing loopholes, kind of like Mitt Romney was doing during the election. So the way to avoid the fiscal cliff is for Congress to reach a deal. Whether or not that's going to happen, we don't know yet.
Considering election day just passed, and Obama did get reelected by a majority of young people, and that young people tend to like care a lot about social services and think that there needs to be some balance as far as how to raise revenue for these services. Do you feel like Republicans are going to continue to kind of just say no, or do you think they'll be able to come to a deal, or is it still kind of too early?
It's early. The president has a lot of leverage when it comes to this because the tax cuts at the end of the year do expire. Mm-hmm. Republicans, like I said, have signaled a willingness to at least talk about revenue in a way that they didn't during the debt ceiling debate last year. The way they're doing it is not the way that the president and Democrats feel it should be done. They're doing it in a way of closing loopholes that is not going to raise the type of revenue that we need. The flip side is that the American people, if you saw exit polls after the election, there's over 60% of people said we should raise taxes on the wealthy, that they should contribute more, that tax increases were going to have to be part of such a deal. So I think, it kind of depends. Do Republicans listen to the people who are voting, the people who are saying, like, yes, we can take this? Do they pay attention to economic evidence that raising taxes on the wealthy is not going to cause economic problems? There are studies from the Congressional Budget Office, the Congressional Research Service, both nonpartisan organizations, that show that raising taxes on the wealthy would have very little effect on the economy. They can listen to that, or they can look at what they've done over the last few years, which is kind of prevent this from happening and causing more problems in terms of uncertainty. Okay, well, thank you so much. That's all the time we have for today. Don't forget to check out campusprogress.org to see how you can get involved in this issue.